Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers, we're here every week, as you know, visiting with interesting people and dealing with topical issues. We welcome in a return guest today.
Yeah, we're really pleased to welcome back to the set of The Verdict in our next segment, Sandy Coates. Sandy is a former United States attorney here in the Western District of Oklahoma and has left that office and is now engaged in private practice. And we've entitled this show, A Life After Government Service. So we're going to find out about some of Sandy's aspirations and what are his challenges, and you'll find him a very entertaining guest.
Life as a U.S. attorney, or at least on the other side of that. Sandy Coates, today's guest on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
One of the reasons why I moved to Rockaway is because it's such a diverse culture and different ethnicities. And my camera has opened some doors to really meet people that I probably wouldn't have gotten to meet without it. I'm Beth Perkins, I'm a professional photographer, and I'm Chickasaw. It came in as like a mini tidal wave. Everything sustainable had just disappeared in one swoop, and I just underestimated this power, and I realized really how little we are in this whole scheme of things and how quickly things can go bad. My community is still rebuilding, and for them to just show up out of the blue and just start clearing out my house was, I'm not one that likes to ask for help. So for someone to come and do that for me it was really touching and humbling. I've thought about the history of the Chickasaws and what they went through as far as relocating and losing their homes and having to rebuild and to thrive in the end after all of that is just a true testament to the Chickasaw strength. And I try and draw from that and remember that that's a part of who I am.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
As I indicated in the opening segment, we are really pleased to welcome back to the set of The Verdict Sandy Coates. Sandy did his undergraduate work at Tulane University, did his law work at the University of Oklahoma, then came out and started practicing law. He ended up in the U.S. Attorney's Office for 12 years, 6 years as an assistant U.S. attorney, and 6 years as the chief U.S. attorney, the U.S. attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma. He has recently decided to leave government service and go into private practice, and I'm very pleased to announce that he has joined the firm with which I am associated, Crowe and Dunleavy. That's not the reason we had him on the show. We've known him forever. As a matter of fact, this is his fourth appearance on The Verdict. Sandy, welcome.
Thank you. It's
Back,
my pleasure.
I should say.
Good to be here.
This is your first time on the show since you've left the U.S. Attorney's Office. Why don't you just kind of sum up your experiences there? What was that like?
Well, we could spend a long time on that. It was an amazing time for me and a great honor to serve, starting with my time as an assistant U.S. attorney. I was involved with some very important and great cases. I worked in the criminal division of the U.S. Attorney's Office as an assistant and did virtually every type of criminal prosecution that the office does. Also was very fortunate and to go down to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina and spent 6 months helping the U.S. Attorney's Office down there. They put out a call that they needed some assistance.
What type of work was that?
Well, really, that was like triage. The state system was really struggling after the storm, and
They lost all their records, I guess, and
they
everything.
did, right? And people and everything was pretty scattered around the country,
Yeah.
and the Department of Justice asked for help for the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Orleans, and I went down and spent 6 months. We were doing violent crime mostly. Any time a case that we could bring a federal charge on a violent case, we would bring it just to try to get those folks off the street. And that was a really challenging but rewarding experience.
Let me ask you about that. Both before and after Katrina, was there an uptick in violent crime in New Orleans after Katrina, or did it go down?
Raw numbers went down because the population went down dramatically. But New Orleans is a unique city, and it's very based on neighborhood. There were small pockets of areas that had intense violent crime and drug dealing, and it was a real challenge for the feds to come in and try to fight that. And for example, there would be a gang shootout, maybe a murder or two, and the state system wasn't adequately handling those cases, and we would file felon in possession of a firearm just to get the individuals off the street.
Wow. And other cases after that?
Well, yeah, I was very involved almost immediately as an assistant U.S. attorney with a huge child prostitution case investigation that reached into about 6 or 7 states, and we identified over 60 young girls that had been trafficked around the country. And that was eye-opening, you might say, and very challenging, but also very rewarding to seek and obtain justice for the victims.
Did that go to trial?
We had 2 cases go to trial. I believe we had 16 or 18 defendants total, and 2 of them went to trial.
As an assistant United States attorney, you tried a bunch of cases.
I did.
My understanding.
That's right.
That's where you got the bulk of your trial experience.
Absolutely.
What kind of cases did you try besides the child prostitution?
Really a little bit of everything. We did some counterfeit cases. We tried some cases involving production and possession of counterfeit money. Did some drug cases. We had a large investigation into a gang on the south side of Oklahoma City that had sort of taken over a neighborhood and started, and the house that they were renting became a drug house, and it was a blue collar neighborhood where folks cooked out on Saturday afternoons and knew each other and watched out for each other, and this group came in and to the point where those folks were afraid to leave their homes, and we prosecuted that case, had 3 trials out of that investigation. Did some white collar cases, some tax fraud. I tried, and the last trial that I had, I was actually U.S. attorney by then. It was a case that I picked up was a case that involved the death of a little boy on Fort Sill, and we tried the mother. The mother actually pled, and we tried the stepfather for murder in his case.
I guess. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was say, how often does the U.S. Attorney's Office interact directly with the White House or with Congress? Is there much connection or communication?
Well, not with Congress. There's with the Department of Justice. There's a whole unit that deals with Congress, and I did regularly meet with our congressional delegation and our senators just to brief them on issues or answer questions if they had them. So the U.S. Attorney's Office pretty much deals with the Department of Justice in Washington. There are issues that the White House becomes interested in and needs input on from U.S. Attorney's offices, and we'll provide that, of course. But 95% of our dealings with Washington are directly with the Department of Justice.
Now, you spent 6 years as an assistant and 6 years approximately as the U.S. Attorney for the Western District. That's a appointed position, is it not?
It is, yeah. I gave up my
requires
career.
confirmation?
Right. I gave up my career position for a political appointment, and directly led to being here today in the private sector again. But yeah, I was very, very honored and fortunate that in 2009 the President nominated me to be the United States Attorney for the Western District, and the Senate confirmed me on Christmas Eve of 2009. I joked it took a little while, and I joked that I was behind the Affordable Care Act, and indeed I was. They voted on that on Christmas Eve morning. They voted on about 4 or 5 of our nominations, and then they went home for Christmas. And so I was sworn in on December the 30th of 2009.
After 12 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office, you came to a conclusion, or to the conclusion that you'd like to leave and do something else. How difficult was it to reach that decision?
It was extremely difficult. I loved the work and the people. Very proud of what we accomplished in my 6 years as United States Attorney. But I always knew that that time would come. I did accept a political appointment, and the president's term is winding down. And I felt like it was time for me and for the office. I think the office was in great shape. I'd hired over half of the assistants in the office now. I hired. And
about how many are those?
There are 40 assistants, and I hired 22 of them, and about half the staff as well. And I'm very proud of who's in the office. I've tried about every type of case I think I was going to try, and hired about everybody I was going to hire, and I just thought it was time for a transition.
Well, you also got some good managerial experience, because I guess as U.S. Attorney, you're in charge of those 40 or so lawyers.
That's right.
You got to manage them like a law firm.
It is like a law firm, and it was a different role when I became U.S. Attorney. I did keep a caseload, mostly because that's what I like to do, and but also we have a tradition of that in our office. It's a little bit unusual around the country, but you know, we have 4 or 5 of our judges in the federal courthouse are former U.S. attorneys, and they all kept an active caseload as U.S. Attorney, and I was proud to carry on that tradition. But it was more of a managerial position, dealing with budgets, and then also a little bit in line with the question you asked a few minutes ago, Mayor. I got involved with some national issues, and I was very fortunate in my first year to serve on the Attorney General's Advisory Committee, which is a group of about 14 United States attorneys that meets in Washington for a week about every 4 or 5 weeks, and deals with issues that the Attorney General has identified that are his or her priority issues, and did that. And then I was on a bunch of subcommittees that met regularly to deal with policy and issues, Native American, for example, or criminal practice. And it was great to be involved with those on a national level. And then the colleagues that I got to know and to meet, I didn't expect to come as close to the other U.S. attorneys around the country as I did. And that was a real pleasure to get to know them and be with them.
Sandy Coates recently stepped down as the U.S. Attorney for the Western District in the state of Oklahoma. We'll have more of Sandy after this break on The Verdict.
Clean air, water, and land. Abundant American energy. You don't have to choose one or the other. Because for Oklahoma and America's future, both matter. That's why Oklahoma's oil and natural gas producers share valuable 3D seismic data with regulators and scientists, leading to better views of Oklahoma's diverse geology and more insights into protecting our land. Learn more about these efforts at oerb.com/bothmatter.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. We're visiting with Sandy Coates, who recently stepped down as the U.S. Attorney for the Western District in the state of Oklahoma and is now in private practice. I'm guessing as your years in the U.S. Attorney's Office, you dealt with a lot of local law enforcement in the state of Oklahoma, which would include police departments in every little municipality. It would include sheriff's office in every county. It would include the State Bureau of Investigation and the Highway Patrol. What are your perceptions of local law enforcement in the state of Oklahoma and how well Oklahomans are protected?
Well, I'm very proud of local law enforcement and the relationships that we have. Law enforcement in Oklahoma is seamless, whether it's federal, state, or local. I saw very little proprietary fighting about cases. There's a lot of task forces that are run that include all levels of law enforcement, and they work extraordinarily well together. I think that's a little bit coming out of the bombing. There's a true feeling of we're all in this together, and the territorial fighting that happens some places just simply doesn't happen here. And they do great cases. Local law enforcement, you're right, we worked with Oklahoma City Police Department, Midwest City, Edmond, and everything Western Oklahoma, OSBI, and all our federal partners.
Generally, are you calling them or are they calling you when a case first kind of hits your desk?
Well, they bring them to us, so we don't do investigations. We prosecute the cases. I say we, as if I'm still there, but the United States Attorney's Office. Sometimes, if it's an investigation, they need a lawyer to guide them in legal issues. They'll call, and we would assign a U.S. assistant to it. But generally, law enforcement brings cases to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
What happens if a local prosecutor wants the case and your office wants the case? What happens there? Is that ever an issue?
It has been. It was an issue. Most of the time, the district attorney and the U.S. attorney simply had a conversation and figured out what was the best for the case. And there were a few cases. I understand district attorneys have to get reelected. If there's the case that is a big deal in their community, they felt like they needed to prosecute it. I totally respected that. But most of the time, the district attorneys do incredible work and have way too many cases to handle.
Yeah, so they're grateful if you take a case off their hands and allows them to work on another one.
Very rarely did they say no. Most of the time it was take what you can and run with it.
I know, as we indicated earlier, that you're now engaging in private practice. Did you ever consider doing something other than private practice after you left the U.S. Attorney's Office?
Oh,
like
sure.
Television or something.
I don't know about that. I don't think I have that gene in me, but I thought about other things, but it seemed like the natural thing. I was in private practice before becoming an assistant U.S. attorney, so I always thought and knew that'd be where I'd end up.
Yeah.
What do you envision being your major areas of emphasis in private practice? What kind of work do you think you'll be doing?
Well, I'm a trial lawyer at heart, so litigation and cases that
you come by that naturally.
I do.
With your father.
It's a blessing and a curse, you might say. And with my experience, I think I hope to develop a white-collar criminal defense practice and corporate investigation. When the government comes calling, I have some specialized knowledge and experience that'll help individuals and companies when that happens. That's an area that the firm that I've been very fortunate to associate with now, Crowe & Dunlevy, has a great history of work in that area, and I hope to just continue and bolster that a little bit.
One national case that's getting headlines today is Apple versus the United States government. The government believing that Apple should develop software to help them get phone records of suspected terrorists. What's your view on that? You have an opinion on who's right, who's wrong?
I do, and it's a challenge. When you deal with these issues of personal privacy, and on the other hand, the government needing information to solve a crime or to prevent a future crime, those are hard issues. If you're on one side, if you want to not worry about civil liberties and give the government the ability to look at all that stuff, that's easy to do, and that happens in some countries. On the other side, if you want to have the security and the individual liberties trump everything else, that's fine. But if you're going to ask government to protect us, that's going to be very, very difficult. And it's that in between that where we are with the Apple case that makes it difficult. I think it's a little overblown, to be honest with you. This isn't an intrusion into someone's civil liberties or rights. This is what we do every day, what law enforcement does every day, and that's get a warrant from a federal judge or a state judge, a search warrant, and it happens all the time. So I think it's pretty clear that in that instance, when a judge says there's probable cause to search something, that's been the law here in this country for many, many years, and I think the company ought to follow the law and provide that to the government.
It seems like in recent days, I've noticed that Bill Gates has come out in favor of the government, what I perceive to be the government's position on that what's being asked is pretty small and very important. On the other hand, not a massive intrusion into even that person's privacy, well, maybe that person who's now dead, privacy, but not anybody else's for that matter, except perhaps co-conspirators. What do you think will be the impact of Gates' position?
Well, I don't think it has much of an impact, to be honest with you. I mean, hopefully it might with public opinion, and that is important. But I think Mr. Gates is right. I think that search warrants with these tech companies are a pretty regular undertaking by law enforcement, whether it's an email server or a phone or phone records. It's not something that law enforcement takes lightly and has the ability just to go get anytime they want. It's a matter of going to get the proper approval from a judge and seeking a very narrow amount of information that's consistent with the Constitution.
Your father, Andy Coates, has had a distinguished career as both a politician and as a legal expert and president, or not president, but I guess what would the term be at the OU Law School?
The dean.
The dean of the OU Law School. How has he influenced your career?
Well, I think you'd say, like probably all of us with our parents, he's influenced almost everything that I've done. I didn't set out to go into to the law necessarily or to public service, but I think it's what I saw growing up, and it came a little bit naturally to me through his example. And I mean, I look at our relationship. We're very fortunate to have a very close relationship still, and he's just a tremendous resource for me that a lot of people don't have. And to be able to consult with him on career decisions and life decisions has been a true blessing.
Did you ever consider doing as Andy is doing now, going into teaching?
I have, and I'd like to. I know you've taught at the OU Law School for many years, and that's something that really does interest me. I come from a family of teachers. My wife's a teacher, and my mother was a teacher for over 50 years, and further back than that. So that's true public service in my opinion, and that's something I'd like to do sometime in my career.
My memory is, and we just have a few seconds left, but my memory is that your grandfather was named Sandy.
That's right.
You, I guess, therefore named after your grandfather.
Yes, Sandford Coates.
He was a very fine gentleman. I knew him well and appreciated his sense of humor as well as his competence in everything he did.
You're nice to say that. He had a big influence on my life as well. He was an engineer and a pool builder and a small business owner here in Oklahoma City for many years, and a great guy. That's
where Andy gets his sense of humor, and I'm sure some of that has rubbed off on you as well.
It has.
All right. Well, Sandy, thanks and good luck in the new stage of your professional career.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming.
All right.
Appreciate
Sandy Coates, the outgoing Western District U.S. Attorney. And Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back.
There are now 11 million of us who live here and work here. I was 15 when I came here 6 years ago. I raised my family here. I drive my truck to my job every day. The only difference between now and 6 years ago, I do it legally. I wanted to. Because this is my home.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers are wrapping up the show with Sandy Coates.
I've known Sandy since he was an infant, literally. His father, Andy, and I have been partners for way too many years to discuss. But Sandy got a great reputation for the work he did in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I have no doubt that he'll continue that good work in private practice. He's a man of integrity and competence, and those are two good qualities.
Like his dad, he's got an interesting collection of life experiences already.
He does.
All right, we'll give some website information. If you'd like more information with Sandy or want to send him an email, you can contact him through the law firm crowdunlevy.com. And we have a website. Love for you to go on our website and tell us about a guest you'd like to see or a topic you'd like to see us discussed. Our website is theverdict.tv. That's going to do it, though, for this week's show. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week right here on The Verdict.